Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Socks High School, where today I'm going to be dealing with the personal life perspective, which is one of the more complicated theories in the family and households topic of AQA sociology. This content would appear in paper 2, the topics in sociology, and obviously the topic of family. So the whole point of the personal life perspective is all about what family means to you. So it's not about the theories that have come before, where some sociologists sit in this armchair and say, this is what the family is. It's all about shaping what the family means to you, which is why when we did this lesson, I asked you to bring in photos to talk about what family meant to you. Unlike other perspectives, it means that we are able to recognise that family goes beyond those ties based on marriage or based on blood relations. And instead, we can often consider our family to include the following 5 areas, as well as other things: relationships with friends, fictive kin, so people that you treat as family that aren't necessarily related to you, chosen families, creating kind of supportive networks which often links to same-sex couples, relationships potentially with dead relatives who continue to shape your lives, who you perhaps speak to or communicate with in some form. And there's also been some sociological research into how pets play a part in family life. Now, as a starting point of the personal life perspective, we need to be aware that it's obviously an interactionist perspective, and it's really critical of the theories like functionalism, feminism, and Marxism. Those theories tend to assume that traditional nuclear family is the dominant family type, despite the fact that we see such a diversity in the way that people live in family units in the 21st century. And the other thing is that they're structural theories. They assume that families and the members of those families are essentially puppets that just go along with this nuclear family structure or expectations of family life that's been set onto us. Now, this is all based on the work of Carol Smart, who completely disagrees that A, the nuclear family is the type of family that people live in, but also B, that we are controlled and constrained within this idea of what a family is. So according to Carol Smart, in order to fully understand families, instead we've got to look at what individuals think about family and what meanings they give to those relationships, not about what the structures are based on. So as opposed to taking a more kind of objective view of understanding society and family, this is taking an interpretivist perspective, a more subjective perspective, in the form of social action theory and interactionist theory, that is fully focused on looking at the dynamics between people and the meanings that they put onto those relationships and everyday interactions. And it's what we refer to as a bottom-up approach, where we look at what individuals have got to say and create a theory from there, as opposed to what maybe feminists, Marxists and functionalists would do, where they create a theory and then put those ideas onto people. So it's much more of an interpretivist way of doing research. Here is one example of how family isn't as structural theories might suggest. It's been thought that family can often include pets, and when Tipper did her study onto family relationships, children often saw pets as part of the family. Other research suggests that 90% of pet owners think their animal is part of their family, and we go on even further. A third of those people say they prefer their pets to real life family members. 15% consider their pet as more important than their cousin. Owners have had professional portraits of their pets. 9% of dog owners love their animals so much they're thinking of leaving something to them in their will. So that's just an example of how pets are like family. You can also look at some research by Smart into this idea of dibblings, and dibblings is the idea that we have relatives based on sperm donors. So now that the topic of infertility is often more in discussion, we hear about donor siblings, and that you have relationships with people that, whilst they're not considered your family, you are still connected to them through a donor parent, often sperm donors. Again, families of choice, which spans a lot of different things, but either in the form of fictive kin, calling people aunties and uncles despite the fact they are not those people, and also couples selecting networks of people, often same-sex couples, who fulfill roles like a family, but it's not based on those traditional forms of blood, marriage, or genetics. And this links into some of the ideas of postmodernism, where we suit family around our needs and our desires. It's not about having that nuclear family unit because we've been told that's how we need to live. So in summary, really, the family isn't in decline, as lots of theories suggest. It's just that family is now very, very different to how it used to be. It's much more diverse, it's much more complex, it's much more based on what the individual sees as their family, as opposed to it being a family unit that's got to kind of be stuck to. Now, one of the ways that we can analyse family units and research how people kind of see their own family is through something called life course analysis. And it links to part of the personal life perspective. And it maps out the stages that you would expect a normal family to pass through. Okay, so you can see this flow chart on the right that talks through the different stages that you would expect somebody to pass through, with different arrows giving you different options of what could happen. Now, this has been used by Tamara Haravan, who looks at life course analysis. And it means that kind of people can talk through their life stage, and sociologists can map out whether people are following a traditional pattern or a less traditional pattern. And they can talk through what happened in their life and how family shaped them at different points on those stages. It divides the stages of family up and can allow people to talk about their past experiences with evidence. And it can also allow you to predict what family types might be in the future. So it's much more of an interactionist way of researching the family, kind of asking individuals to map out their life course. Much better than saying this is what the family is and this is how people should act. However, if we look at that flowchart there, it could be argued that even something like that is outdated and oversimplified, and family today is much more diverse. We can't rely on past evidence, as evidence may be biased. We can't predict individuals' future. So some sociologists would claim that this use of life course analysis is arguably not that helpful. So we need to begin to evaluate some of the personal life perspective. And there are a few things that we can say. Positive, it helps us to understand how people themselves construct their own relationships. It sees intimate relationships performing an important function of us, giving us a sense of belonging. It recognises that relatedness is not always positive, and that some people will move away from their related family because of problems that they have, and they choose other forms of family to overcome those issues. It's more relevant. It looks at modern day society, whereas some of the theories of functionalism and Marxism are based on societies a long time ago. It takes into consideration this idea of family diversity, questioning whether family is what we think it is. And it also looks at wider kinship networks, not just focused on families, but also considering other relationships. Pause the video and take a minute to think if you can think of any weaknesses, because there are a lot of strengths. Can you think of any weaknesses of the theory? So here are some criticisms. Sociologists like Marxists argue that because it's such a small scale bit of research, you can't generalise it to the group. It tends to be more descriptive rather than analytical, so it's not particularly scientific. Larger sociological structures do end up having an impact. Think about the sort of role that men and women tend to play in the family, and that suggests that maybe there's some other larger system going on here, like patriarchy. People aren't always completely free to act, and maybe they don't have as much free will, and society will control their behaviour in some way. They're some of the key criticisms of the personal life perspective. But remember, there are still some really positive aspects of the personal life perspective. It recognises the diversity, unlike theories like functionalism. It does recognise that we're not just puppets, we're not manipulated. It acknowledges that there are different factors, and families from different classes, different ethnicities will have different forms of family, and it doesn't impose one view of the family. And it's positive for groups that are often less representative. It looks more at groups like the LGBTQ community who are often not focused on. So thank you for watching this video on the personal life perspective. I hope you have found it useful. Obviously, when you read the textbooks and you do a little bit more development of this, you would need to go into a bit more detail about the things that have been mentioned in this video. But remember, if you had an essay on the personal life perspective, you'd also be probably expected to bring in a lot of other areas, so either other theories or potentially link it to postmodernism, so that, you know, if you're feeling like you haven't got enough to write about the personal life perspective, there's actually quite a lot more that you would bring into an essay on it. It would often be, you know, looking at, is the family this structural concept, or is it something more unique and individual? Thanks for watching.